Welcome to the most important week of the year for the podcast industry. Welcome to Podcast Movement 2025.
Well, first of all, I want to thank you guys for taking your time to be in this session today. So give yourself a round of applause for being here. All right, I'm officially on the clock, so let's get into this. So as of July 2025, Spotify stated that they have over 7 million podcast titles on their platform. And that's just on Spotify. And according to a podcasting statistics and trends article published by the good folks at Riverside, approximately 90% of podcasters will quit only after 3 episodes. And of the 10% remaining, 90% of that 10% will quit after publishing 20 episodes, which means if you've published 21 or more episodes, you are on the top 1% of podcasters in the world in terms of consistency and production. So if that's you right now, go ahead and give yourself a round of applause. High five your neighbor. 1% air five. If I had some hands, I would slap you guys. Okay. So what's the problem here, guys? What's the challenge? Why are 90% of podcasters quitting after 3 and 20 episodes? Well, according to a podcasting trends and statistical article published by another big podcast platform, 90% of podcasters are quitting because they simply underestimated the workload, meaning poor planning and execution when it comes to recording, production, show notes, promotion, and much more. Can anyone relate to having to struggle doing all these things? I know I sure can. In fact, I was almost a part of the 90% myself. Not the first 90%, but the second 90%, the folks that quit by 20 episodes, that was almost me. So I say that to say right now, if that's you right now, like you're on the fence, you're teetering, I want to let you know that I hear you, I see you, I get it, and I got you. So here's my question. What if I could show you 5 prompts that will help you to produce and edit better clips, give you more clickable show notes and titles, give you a schedule designed to keep your current audience attentive while attracting new ones? Would you be interested? Some of you guys are like, come on, Corey. You know why that's what we're in this session? Stop with the rhetorical questions. So over the next 25 minutes or so, I'm going to give you 5 AI prompts. That's right, just 5 AI prompts that's going to help to boost your podcast visibility. It's going to help you boost your engagement, and most importantly, save you hours of time each week, especially with things that you don't like to do. Okay? So my name is Kareem. I'm the host of the 3 Questions Podcast, a podcast where I sit down with successful people from all walks of life. But rather than just talk about their wins and their successes, which I'm sure we've all heard at least 1,000 times at this point, we tend to start the conversation around their failures, their setbacks, their trials and tribulations. More importantly, the lessons that they learn from those experiences. Now, why do I focus on people's failure stories? Because I discovered recently that sometimes we don't actually need to learn anything new. We just need to know that somebody else went through it too. Now, I'm currently in my 5th season, so that's right, you guessed it, I'm also a 1%er, just like some of the folks here in this room. And this is just a snapshot of some of the guests that I've had on my pod over the years. All right, I'm done with my elevator pitch now. I had to get that in real quick. Okay, so remember when I said to you guys, I was almost a part of the 90%, the folks that quit by 20 episodes? Well, after the last conference in Chicago, I got really curious, and I decided to run my podcast analytics and links through ChatGPT. I then asked it a series of prompts that forever changed my podcast in an extremely meaningful way, like extremely. Now, I want to warn you, the numbers that I'm about to show you are going to look just wild and downright unbelievable, like something you would see out of like a sketchy YouTube ad or something like that. But hear me out, okay? Here it goes. So, over a 90-day period, I saw an 8,917% increase in views, a 12,900% jump in subscriptions, 11,563% increase in watch time, and a 357% boost in click-through rate on YouTube. all organic. So removing any paid promotion that I did. And no, I didn't hire a team. I just got radically invested in how I used AI, specifically with better prompts. And I wasn't even trying to hack or game the algorithm. I just decided to use tools like ChatGPT to write more clickable titles and show notes and to find topics that my audience already cared about. So I want to be clear. The growth that you see here isn't magic. Rather, it's a series of small, doable tweaks that compounded. And that's what I want you guys to get away from today's conversation. Not just the numbers, but the fact that this is absolutely doable for everyone in this room. Y'all still with me? All right, perfect. Let's jump right into these prompts. All right, prompt number 1. Nail your title in 30 seconds. Nail your title in 30 seconds. Now, has anyone ever come out of like an amazing recording session? The energy is just out of this world. The synergy between you and your co-host and your guest is off the charts. Then only to kind of feel like, what am I going to name this thing? Or what's this YouTube thumbnail caption? What's that going to be like? I know that's happened to me a few times. So here's what I do now. I make a mental note during the recording process of where the conversation became noticeably elevated or engaging. And then I go into ChatGPT and I typed in this prompt here. Write me 3 to 5 attention-grabbing, eye-catching, clickable, positively polarizing YouTube thumbnail captions or podcast episode titles based on your episode topic. Now, if I was doing this for myself, it would read like this when I did this prompt a few months ago. Write me 3 to 5 attention-grabbing, eye-catching, clickable, positively polarizing YouTube thumbnail captions based on top 3 places Black people need to travel. No one said anything about that? Some people might find that awkward or weird, but I'll tell you why. Number 1, I love to travel. It's one of my favorite things to do in this entire world. I've been to over 15 countries at this point in my life. And number 2, this is actually a very popular and common conversation within the Black community. And the last time I checked and looked at myself in the mirror, I am still, you guys know where I'm going with that. So when I typed this prompt in for myself, here are some thumbnail captions that it provided me with. No racism, just vibes. These 3 countries love Black people. Black, vibes, and safe. You have to go here. Now, sometimes I'll do a remix, meaning that I'll mix and match 1 or 2 of the suggestions together and create an entirely new caption. And then sometimes I'm just replacing a word here or there to make sure that it fits my tonality. Now, ChatGPT will learn your tone over time, but you can also prompt it to learn your tone right away. Now, I also want to call out something specific in this prompt. Notice that in this prompt, I just didn't put polarizing. I put positively polarizing. Why? Because I don't want to sound clickbaity. That's not my style, and that's not my jam. But I do, however, want to pique people's interest with a thumbnail title or a caption that is thought-provoking. Make sense? Okay, perfect. Now, what's the key takeaway here? Actually, let me take a step back for a second. Why is having an attention-grabbing, eye-catching, clickable, positively polarizing YouTube thumbnail caption or episode title important? Because many copywriters will tell you that when it comes to content creation and marketing, 80% of people will only read the titles. 80% of people will only read the headlines. So, the key takeaway is this. People don't read. Well, they do. You just have to incentivize them first. And you can use your YouTube thumbnail captions and episode titles to do so. Okay? All right, moving on. Prompt number 2. Show notes that convert listeners. Show notes that convert listeners. Now, most podcasters treat show note descriptions like a checkbox. Boring SEO dead text. And I get it, because I'm kind of like that too. I actually dread this part of the process because it just takes so much brain power out of me. And quite frankly, I just don't really care that much about show notes descriptions. And if you read some of my earlier show notes, it kind of shows. But show note descriptions are important because they help users decide whether or not to click on your pod in search results, and they help search engines better recognize and understand your content. Now, remember what I said earlier on. A part of my goal here today is to help you to save time, especially with things that you don't like to do, like in my case, show note descriptions. So, quick question for y'all. Who in here has an interview-style podcast show? Oh, almost the whole room. Okay, you guys are going to love this. So here's what I do now. I'll copy and paste my questions for my guests along with the bio that I've written up for my guests, and I'll type in this prompt. Write me a brief 2 to 3 sentence long show notes description that is authentically engaging and organically compelling based on insert your questions plus your bio of your guests. Now, when I did this for my most recent episode, here's what it came back with for me. She went from national volleyball star to one of the top 0.004% realtors in the GTA, the Greater Toronto Area, all before the age of 30. Hello. In this episode, Jaden Kennedy shares the raw moments behind the polish, the habits that built her brand, and the mindset shift that, sorry, I forgot my glasses, that helped her break into luxury real estate without shortcuts or handouts. If you're ready to stop playing small, this one's for you. Isn't that so good? Wouldn't you read or wouldn't you listen or watch that episode based on the show notes description? So, what's the key takeaway here? A good show notes description is your free marketing copy. Don't waste the space. That simple, okay? Moving on. Prompt number 3, find guests that grow your show. Find guests that grow your show. Now, at the last conference at Podcast Evolutions, I did a talk called Shoot Your Shot. And it was basically about the impact that having a big name or notable guest can have on your podcast show in terms of streams, downloads, and views. And I mentioned for myself, whenever I had a big name or notable guest on my podcast show, I saw an uptick of about 70% in streams, okay? Now, I know everybody in this room right now can name at least 1 to 3 big name or notable guests that they would like to have on their podcast show, but then I would ask you, and then what? What happens after that? Now, remember what I said, 90% of podcasters are quitting because of poor planning and execution. But not to worry. This is where AI comes in. So you can use ChatGPT and tools similar to that and type in this prompt here. Suggest 5 potential podcast guests insert your local city or town based on my podcast link. So you actually want to include your podcast link feed. So I just include my Spotify feed. Who are rising voices or up and coming in your niche. So whatever your niche is, so that's sports, that's true crime, etc., that have active audiences on LinkedIn or Instagram, I would likely say yes to a small or mid-sized podcast. Now, if I was doing this for myself, which I have, it would sound like this. Suggest 5 potential podcast guests in the Toronto area based on my podcast, so I'll include my link, who are rising or up-and-coming voices that have an inspiring story about overcoming failure, that have active audiences on LinkedIn or Instagram, I would likely say yes to a small or mid-sized podcast. Whew, that was a mouthful. So let me stop here for a second. Can anyone guess why I decided to include in this prompt that this prospective guest should have an active audience on Instagram or LinkedIn? Now, I know you guys don't have mics right now, but if the thought that's running across your mind is if they have an active audience, and that active audience discovers that they're going to be on your pod, what is that active audience most likely going to do? Tune in, right? So by virtue of having this guest on your pod, you're going to get some of their audience, if not most of their audience. So it's like that old saying, a rising tide lifts all boats. Now, when I typed this prompt in for myself, here's what it came back with for me. So, Tamar Huggins, founder of TechSpark and SparkPlug AI. Tamar bounced back from job loss during the 2009 recession to become a visionary in culturally responsive tech education for Black youth. Fatima Zaidi, Toronto-based entrepreneur, U of T lecturer, and founder of Quill and co-host. Fatima navigated immigrant identity and business challenges to become a leading voice in podcasting and tech. Asante Hunting, a mental health advocate and co-founder of Reach Out Response Network. Asante overcame personal trauma, mental health struggles to pioneer community-based alternatives to crisis response. And I'll stop there. You guys get the point. Now, earlier, I told you guys, I give you a brief synopsis about my podcast and how we start the conversation. I even showed you a snapshot of my previous guest. Now, seeing this list, that chat provided, you could clearly see how these guests would be a good fit for my podcast. And here's the kicker. 4 out of 5 of them weren't even on my radar. Like, I don't know who 4 out of 5 of these people are, right? So, what's the key takeaway here? Don't limit your use of AI to just titles and show notes. That's the baseline. Use it as your research assistant. Ask it, who are the top 5 people I should be interviewing next? And then you can also prompt and say, what are the best ways for me to reach out to these individuals? You guys getting me? Perfect. All right. Prompt number 4, trending topics and viral clips. Trending topics and viral clips. Guys, let's be honest. All of us have been guessing. At least most of us have. So let's stop. Let's start using AI to guide us with data-backed trends. So for example, if you want to figure out what are the best topics for you to discuss based on your podcast category, I would try this prompt here. Give me 3 hot, trending podcast topic ideas, then insert your niche, so that's sports, true crime, whatever you talk about, that people are currently debating online. Now, if I was doing this prompt for myself, it would sound like this. Give me 3 hot, trending podcast topic ideas in the personal development space about success and failure that people are currently debating online. Now, with this prompt here, you can actually be a bit more general, meaning that you don't have to niche it down so much, but I will play around with that and see what works best for you and your pod. Now, who in here would like one of their podcast clips to get 20,000 views or more? Show of hands. Okay. So, if you would like one of your podcast clips to start trending or potentially go viral, I would personally recommend using Opus Clips. Is anyone familiar with Opus Clips? Okay, I recommend Opus Clips, and I would try out their AI functionality and type in this prompt here. Generate attention-grabbing social clips that spark curiosity and engagement about, insert your topic of conversation. So remember earlier on, I said make a mental note of where your conversation became noticeably engaging, right? So whatever that is for you, that's what you want to enter in here. Then you want to end with, the tone should be bold, thought-provoking, and made to stop the scroll. Now, 3 months ago, I used this prompt for a clip that I did. I did an interview with the VP of Marketing for Disney Canada, and we had a very elevated and engaging conversation about Ryan Coogler's movie, Sinners. Anyone see that? Great movie, highly recommend it if you haven't. And so when I did this prompt, it generated a clip. I'll go back to the slide here, did just under 20,000 views in less than 30 days. Okay, so try that out for yourself and let me know how that works out for you. Okay, I want to introduce most of you to a new term here, contextual engineering. Contextual engineering. Is anyone familiar with this term? One person, the AI guy that's doing a talk tomorrow. Go check out his event, his talk tomorrow too. So, contextual engineering, I didn't know what this was 3 months ago myself. So, it simply means when you give AI very specific, detailed instructions, so it gives you the most helpful and relevant response for your situation. So I bring this up here because with the last 2 prompts that I just shared with you guys, we can actually be more specific. We could actually be more detailed. For example, I could say, focus on failure over success when it comes to personal development. I could tell it to use emotional or controversial language so we can drive engagement and audience reaction. Is that making sense to everybody? Okay, so what's the key takeaway here? Less is not more. More is more with AI. So get deep in terms of the context you're providing. Start deep, and you can always scale it back if you don't like what it provides. Okay, last but not least, prompt number 5. Timing is still everything. Timing is still everything. Now, you can use AI to figure out the best time to publish your podcast episodes and the best time to post your podcast clips. Knowing the optimal times to publish your podcast episodes can give independent creators like you and I an opportune strategic advantage to land in listeners' feeds right when they're about to press play. Meaning that a simple shift in timing can lead to more optimal results and more podcast engagement. So, if you'd like to figure out the best time to publish your podcast episode, I would try this prompt here. As an independent creator, what are the best times to publish my podcast episodes in August 2025? Survey says 5 a.m. to 9 a.m. local time, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. Now, show of hands, who thought it was going to be a Monday? Nobody? One person. Thank you for being so honest. Now, notice in this prompt, I was so specific in the time frame. I said August 2025. Why did I do that? Well, two reasons. One, there are seasonality trends. Just like there's trends in the stock market and the real estate market, there are trends in listeners' consumption habits. So I want to let it know what time frame I'm publishing my episode. And number two, we just talked about contextual engineering, right? The more information we give it, the better response we can get back, all right? Now, when we decide to publish our episodes during this time frame, it's going to put our podcast at the top of listeners' feeds when they're about to start their day. So think of users doing their early morning commute to work, or doing an early morning workout, or people that are just a part of that, what they call the coffee scroll mafia. You know, they just scroll first thing in the morning. If that's you, no judgment, okay? Then in terms of the midweek launch dates, Tuesday, Wednesdays, and Thursdays, these days are starting to see an uptick in engagement in terms of publishing your episodes. And Mondays have become absolutely chaotic. Now, my kind of theory of why Monday has become chaotic is because all the OG podcasters, they all publish on a Monday morning. Not saying you can't be successful, but just know that's a very crowded space to launch or to publish your podcast episode. Then in terms of the days with the least amount of engagement, that would be Friday and the weekends. And that's simply because people are prioritizing social activities with their family, friends, and loved ones, okay? Now, fun fact for you guys, Tuesday has now become the most common day for top performing podcast shows to publish their episodes. Now, to also figure out the best time to post your podcast clips, you can actually use a very similar prompt. In fact, I would try this prompt here. What are the best times to post this podcast clip? So you want to actually upload your podcast clip, so attach it as a file in ChatGPT, and then you want to say on IG Reels, TikTok, and YouTube Shorts, based on current engagement trends, and then insert your podcast category. So for me, it would be society and culture, or people on blogs, depending on what platform I'm looking at. So when I typed this prompt in for myself, here's what it came back with for me. For IG Reels, Monday through Thursday, 8 a.m. to 12 p.m. or 1 to 3 p.m. TikTok, Monday through Thursday, 12 to 5 p.m. or Sunday at 8 p.m. Catch that weekend scroll. And then YouTube Shorts, Monday through Friday, 12 to 3 p.m. and in the evenings, 6 to 9 p.m. And then it gave me prime time slots, Tuesday at 2, Thursday at 6, and Friday at 3. Now, I want to add some context here. If we decided to enter your podcast category, let's say it was true crime, potentially you could get a different set of results. And then also, if you decide to include your location, like if we put Dallas, Texas, also potentially you can get a different set of results, right? So something to keep in mind here. All right. Is everyone finding this helpful? Amazing. Okay, so I know I just shared a ton of information here. So what I would like to do now is distill it down to 3 actionable takeaways, okay? So the first one is this. Experiment consistently. Experiment consistently. Guys, it's important for us to have a test and learn mentality. Test and learn. Repeat this. Test and learn. I say that because in order to get to the next level, you're going to have to try some new stuff. You're going to have to try some new things. And the other thing I'll mention about test and learn is even if your podcast is having amazing success right now, you don't know if there's going to be another level you can reach if you don't experiment. And the last thing I'll mention about experimentation is last summer they had Stephen Bartlett here, host of the Diary of the CEO, if you guys are familiar with that podcast. So during his keynote, Stephen said this. He said his team will test their YouTube thumbnail and episode titles up to 400 times per episode. Now, I'm not suggesting we all do that level of volume because we most likely don't have the bandwidth or the capacity to do so. But what I'm trying to get across here is we got to consistently get into the habit of testing and learning. So if your episode is not taking off the way you want it to, switch out the thumbnail, switch out the title, try something different. Make sense? All right. Number 2, don't limit your use of AI to just titles and show notes. See and use AI as your research assistant And as your podcast strategist, ask it, who are the top 5 people I should go after next? What are the top 5 topics I should be discussing based on my podcast category? What should my release schedule look like if these are my goals? Don't just have these one-off conversations with AI. Talk to it like it's your podcast strategist. That's the next level. And number 3, most importantly, have fun. Stay curious and be foolish. I'm remixing a little bit of what Steve Jobs once said here. But in all seriousness, guys, I'm literally a living, walking example of what can happen when you decide to try something new and experiment. Now, I know some of you might just think that's like a nice, warm and fuzzy way to end this conversation, but let me show you guys something that I think you'll find pretty interesting. A little hard to read, but this screenshot here, some of you are going to know exactly what this is just by looking at it, and some of you are going to need a little bit more context, so let me provide. I alluded to this earlier. After Chicago, I had no plans of speaking again this year. Then one night, I got a random flash idea, and I said, what if I did a talk on how to use AI to increase my podcast engagement, and I use myself as the experiment to provide a good case study? So what you're looking at here is a screenshot of me prompting ChatGPT to give me the framework of my talk so I could submit it so I could be a speaker here today. Right? And if you look at your description of this session, you'll see a lot of similarities between what's on the, in fact, it's the exact same. I'm not gonna lie to you. It's the exact same, okay? So not only was I afforded the privilege and the opportunity to speak and share with you all here today, but this line of thinking, the way that I'm using AI has changed my podcast tremendously, and I know if you guys do the same, you guys are gonna have better results than I did. Now, before I part ways, I'd be remiss if I didn't address the elephant in the room. And that is that I know that some people believe and feel that using AI is cheating. Well, I'm here to tell you it's not, especially if you're using it with integrity and you're being intentional about your use. And I know that AI sometimes provides us with incorrect information, which is why you can't take everything that it says at face value. But if you learn how to interact with it thoughtfully, if you learn how to ask it the right questions, if you use it to reflect on your own ideas, it then becomes a tool for clarity, not a crutch. And that's where the value lies. And that's where the magic happens. And that's what I hope you walk away with from this conversation. That when used correctly, AI is a tool that can help you to think more deeply about your podcast, not less. All right, guys, that's my time here. I got 2 minutes left. If you guys would like to keep in contact with me, you could go ahead and scan the QR code. I'll share this entire deck with you. If you click on the email icon, send me a drop me a quick line. I'll share the entire deck with you. That would be the easiest way. But I have 1 minute and 50 seconds, so if you have any questions, I'll take them. If not, I'll see you guys in the hallways. Yes, Mike here.
Sorry, just a tactical question. You mentioned testing, let's say, even if we just tested 5 thumbnails and 5 titles, right? Do you just do all that? Do you literally sit there for like an hour after you publish and then you're testing them in that hour? Or what's the tactic around that?
No, great question. So let me speak specifically to one platform, YouTube. So YouTube has like I'm not going to use the right terminology here, but they have a A/B testing functionality for thumbnails where you can literally launch 3 different thumbnails at the same time. So over like a 72-hour window, I'm watching, is it trending? Is it start to pick up? And then if I'm not seeing the results that I have, then I'm going back into chat. I'm saying, hey, based on 3 days, why is this not working? Give me some ideas. And then I'm using my own thoughts, my own learnings, and then I'm coming up with a different set of captions, titles, etc. So if we're talking about YouTube, they literally have a functionality where you can try 3 different thumbnails at the same time. I'm watching it over like a 3 to 5 day window period. And that's an arbitrary day. I made that up. So, but the whole point is you want to track the success that's happening in a short time frame. And if you're not seeing what you like, start asking questions. That's the whole point of this presentation, is start being curious and going to chat to get thoughts and ideas that you weren't even thinking about. Is that helpful? Okay, any other questions? I got 9 seconds. Going once, going twice. And I guess that's it. Thank you, guys. Peace and love.